Okay. Also, unless there is like any big new info on news or competitive stuff that either of you have, I think we're still kind of in that down point where we're not really getting anything. So I don't think we really need to cover anything unless there's something like very specific.
Yeah.
Cool.
The only thing I can think of is the new Universes set got delayed a week because of production issues, but that's not really like it's very minor, all things considered.
Okay.
We can just go right to the topic.
Oh no. Oh no. No, no, no. Nay, I say. Nay. Because I think I mentioned to you I was going to do this last week, but then Ron wasn't here, so I said I'd save it. We have a special surprise thing that I'm going to do.
Nice.
Okay, let me get my mute button up. Oh, not that.
I hope it's a car.
That would be sweet, but no. Okay. Alrighty. Oh, real quick. We can download cars now. You wouldn't download a car.
But I would though.
I would.
Definitely would.
I know, that's why that's so funny. Good old 90s. Was that early 2000s? Or was that in the 90s? Oh my god.
It might have. Let me see.
Might have been late 90s. One or the other.
Okay. Also, what was I going to check?
2004. You wouldn't download a car.
Oh wow.
Oh no.
20 years. Wow.
Oh no, don't say it that way.
We can celebrate the birthday in July.
Hey, it's fine.
Oh,
my
cool.
username is 21 years old at this point.
I feel like every other episode I aged like 10 years. I don't know how this keeps happening. But oh. Okay. What was I doing? I was doing something. What was I doing? I don't remember. Oh, no.
Were you downloading a car?
No. I wish.
Damn.
Okay. I think we're good. All right. Okay. Are you guys ready?
I am
ready.
Okay. Notes. All right. Welcome to episode 51 of the TCCG Roundtable. We're your hosts, dragonrider, DankestDad, and RonMexico. How's it going?
Hey, good to be here.
I am so ready for the weekend. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Well, we have Ron back again. I hope things calmed down and got a little better after last week.
Yeah, last week was not great. Laundry room ceilings should not be leaking. That is not a good thing. If you see your laundry room ceiling leaking, you have a problem and it needs to be addressed immediately. So I had to call apartment maintenance and have them come by, and next thing I know, it's a whirlwind of lots and lots and lots of noise. We now have a new bath and shower and a new ceiling in the laundry room. And things are better than they were. And it also explains the lack of water pressure for years. Like it was fine, you know. It was just like, this shower leaves something to be desired. Like the water pressure isn't great, but whatever, you know, it's good enough. Well, now I have like actual water pressure. It's really nice.
So like, what you're telling me is it was all worth it.
I don't know. The jury's out on that. It's too recent. Give me like a couple months and I'll be like, oh, totally worth it, man. But right now the memory's still so fresh that I'm undecided.
Oh, very fair. Well, we are glad to have you back. But yes, we did, since it was just two of us last week, we kind of last minute were like, oh, let's do a live game of Battlegrounds duos. And that was fun. And poor Dankest totally carried, or like had, I guess, technically had my board carry because I had no clue what I was doing. So I was like, I don't know. This is like my first game literally of Battlegrounds duos since the one game I got to play at BlizzCon. So yeah. An update on that though, I will say, remember Dankest last week when I was talking about, I think I mentioned this on this show, but I did mention it on Doctor 3 as well. But I was like, I don't think I want to like just play with a random person, you know, like this seems like something that I want to just like play, you know, with somebody that I know and I can be in a voice call with. Yeah. So I did not realize that, kind of like when you go at the top of the UI screen to switch like from standard to wild or back. Well, I didn't realize that Battlegrounds had that now. So after we played our duos, I was like, cool, I'm going to like run a Battlegrounds game before I go to bed one night. And then all of a sudden I'm like, what the fuck is this? What? I did not realize that I had queued a duos game with a random person. And it was like, nice. Okay, I guess we're doing this. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I was like, I am going to kind of just look at their board, see what we've got going on. We found some passengers. I can't even remember what heroes we were. I don't know. I think it was like a passive ability where we like, something happened. I don't even remember. But I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Sure, I'm just going to kind of look at their board and kind of do tempo thing and then see how it goes. And we ended up taking second. So we did okay.
Hey, nice.
I know. And I was like, cool. I'm not going to do that again. Quickly changed back to regular Battlegrounds. But like now I can at least say I did it once and I had that experience. It was weird though. And like, I don't know. I really did not know what to think of it. I was like, this is odd. We
did
didn't
you use the emotes?
Like once. That was it. Like, and it was like far into the game. We used that. That was it. It was like, oh, okay.
So if you're out there, a random person who was Dragon Rider's partner for BG's duos, great job on second.
Yes. I remember we were Cho'Gall. That's what it was.
Oh,
I remember. So yeah, we were Cho'Gall. So every time that we got a triple, the other person, our teammate, also got the card to discover something as well. So I was like, let's try to triple and all this. And then eventually they like took one of the tavern spells to switch their hero power. And it was like, okay, I don't know if that's good or bad. Honestly, I have no idea. And I was like, well, I have a triple, so I'm going to like keep this thing. And then they like pinged at one point, like a couple turns after they switched a tavern spell to like switch the hero power. So I was like, okay, I don't think we're really finding as many triples at this point. So I was like, fine, I'll just switch it. And then like one of us picked the Mukla ability. So then we were getting bananas and it was all over the place.
And like the Cho'Gall ability also runs out. I think that's the thing that, like, I know I found out the first time we played it with my friend. He like kept making triples and he's like, it's bugged, you're not getting anything. I'm like, no, you just get 3. And at which point he moused over it in red and was horrified. And
I hate that moment when you have to mouse over something and then read it and you're like, oh god.
What was I thinking?
Wait, I swear I moused over it and it didn't say that. What?
You see, there's
So,
a
wait,
little
wait.
there's a little 3 left
Hmm.
when you spawn with it.
Did that change though? Oh, because we also had that big patch. I swear there wasn't a limit.
Chad is telling you that it wasn't like that at BlizzCon, so you probably didn't have one then, but there was certainly a limit when he went live.
But I just played. This was like since last week recording. Wait.
Oh man.
I don't know. Look, see, this is why I don't play duos, especially with random people. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Look. Okay. Well, we're going to move on. That's fine. I don't know. Okay. We really don't have a ton of news or like organized play info that is different than what we've had, really. There's some stuff coming later this month that we've already talked about, right? I think we have the next Lorcana set coming later this month. We have the next, because we're now into May, we have the next Flesh and Blood set coming later this month. So there's kind of stuff there. And then the competitive circuit for Lorcana kind of coming out this month. Is there anything else either of you want to mention for news or competitive?
Well, there's more sets still coming for just other news. Star Wars Unlimited Aspect of Shadows is just around the corner as well. That's going to be coming around. Universes has Girl Power, their new set, delayed a week, but still coming in May. And yeah, it's going to be lots of cards and lots of competitive once those sets come out and organized play plans start hitting the ground running.
Yeah. All right, awesome. So I guess kind of in lieu of this, and I did want to do this last week, but since Ron wasn't here, I was like, man, I want it to be both of them. So this is something that I have wanted to do. Ron and Dankest don't know what this is. So this is totally going to be like a surprise to them. So they're like, what's happening? I want to play a mini game segment. We're doing a little segment called Card Curator. I will be your host, and Ron and Dankest, we're going to have them alternate back and forth, and they are going to curate a card. They are going to craft a Hearthstone card and design a Hearthstone card.
Oh my.
Yeah.
This is Dankest's dream and my nightmare.
What? Your nightmare? What? You don't want a 3-mana 5/5 beast with charge? It's simple.
Give please.
So I guess the one caveat that I have in mind for this, at least this first time, we can maybe change it in the future if we do this segment again. No collusion, no talking to each other and like deciding things. This is just going to be back and forth, and then you have to go off of what has already been decided. All right, so yes, it's going to be hilarious. All right, so for our viewers here, our video viewers, I'm going to pull this up on the screen. All right, so I have gone to hearthcards.net where we have this custom card maker. All right, so let's decide. Let's pick Ron. Ron's going to decide first. Do you want this to be a spell, weapon, a hero card, or a location?
Oh. I think let's go with a spell.
Spell. All right. There we go. Okay. Dankest, what class or dual class type of spell do you want this to be?
I mean, it's going to be a dual class. We're going to go through new territory. We're going to go Priest Hunter.
That's incredible.
Priest Hunter. Beautiful.
Oh, dear.
Wait. Hello.
Is that even allowed?
Do they make it stick to existing dual classes? Wow.
I don't know, maybe.
It's looking like that.
Unfortunate.
What are the? Well, maybe you can only. I don't know. I
Or-
don't know how this
wait,
works.
is it
I
just-
guess.
Is it just rogue plus anything? What?
I don't know.
The black border
Wait,
looks like rogue.
neutral. Oh,
You
okay.
had
Hold on.
neutral.
Let me see. Hunter, and then select dual class, and
Yep,
then
okay,
priest.
there we go.
Oh wait,
Okay.
it changed.
Mm,
What?
No. Okay, it's
I'm
It's only
confused.
changing one side. I don't know. Okay, well,
here we are. Here we are. Magical. So what if you hit
Priest
the
is
X now?
selected.
What if you hit back now? What happens? And then you choose priest for the other class?
wow.
Okay,
There we go.
nice.
Very nice.
We did it.
Okay. All right.
Okay, the first ever, the first in history, priest hunter dual class
Priest
card.
Hunter. Here we go. Okay, Ron. How much does this Priest Hunter dual class spell cost?
1 mana.
Of course it does. Okay.
Hey,
one
I didn't
mana.
say 0. I said 0. Honestly, if Dankest had chosen any class besides priest, I would have said 0.
Fantastic. Okay. Dankest. What set is this from?
I gotta choose a set?
Yep.
Like an existing one.
It looks like those are the things, yeah.
Interesting. Let's go Blackrock Mountain.
Oh man, I'll never play it.
Why?
Because it's wild. I don't
It's
play wild.
wild.
Maybe
I
they'll
thought-
put it in core. It's fine. It'll get played eventually.
I thought you were a Twist streamer.
You did?
Yeah, I mean, you played a lot of Twist. So I heard you talk about Twist so much. I assumed
Yeah. Yeah, I remember streaming Twists for a grand total of 5 games on day 1 of Twist release and being like, well, that was something I'll never do again.
See, you stream more than me. Twist streamer.
Nice.
Okay. Ron. What is the spell's name?
Ooh. Okay.
This
Now this
hunter
is a special moment. Unleash the light bugs.
I love it. Unleash the light bugs. Okay. All right. Dankest. We have our Priest Hunter 1 mana spell, Unleash the light bugs. What keyword does this have?
The spell has a keyword.
Yeah. That's right.
Interesting. So we're Blackrock Mountain. So I've kind of I've put myself in the hole a bit.
It doesn't necessarily have to be that it has a keyword, but the effect will use a keyword. So what keyword is it going to be tied to?
Ooh.
It's
You know
gonna
what
be
to
tied
say.
to Forge.
What? Oh my god.
Blackrock Mountain.
This guy.
Forge.
Yeah.
This guy. I can't. Charge was right there. It was right there. Oh no.
Okay. All right, Ron. What does this forge effect do?
It gives them charge.
Okay.
Can I do that? I can do that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Let's see. Oops.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Incredible.
All right.
Okay, now it's
Dankest.
basically a 3-mana spell. You nerfed me a little bit. That's what it's fine.
Okay, Dankest, what is the text that goes before the forge effect?
Summon a 0/2 light bug with lifesteal.
Oh, you're a monster. It says they. It says they. Come on now.
For each enemy minion.
Yes.
Summon a 0/2 light bug with life
Yeah, we
steal
just need buffs. We just need buffs. This is fine.
for each enemy minion. Okay.
What in
Yep.
the hell?
With life steal for each.
You take
enemy.
everything I love and
it.
everything I hate and put it together in one thing. Oh my god.
Okay. All right, Ron. Does this have only one or two spell schools? And what's the first one?
It's got 2 spell schools.
2 spell schools. Okay, what's the first one?
The holy one is the softball, easy one that it probably like always has because light bugs and life steal. So I'll let Dankest have the more complicated one if you're going to go to him for the second spell school. I'll go holy and something.
Well,
right,
I know what my
Dankest.
answer to the question is, but I am going to cheat a little bit just to confirm. But do you know Swarm of Lightbugs has no spell school? Fun
Wait,
fact.
really? Oh, that's
Yeah.
weird.
But it should be nature, holy nature. Like that one
Oh.
seems very obvious, very
Holy
straightforward.
nature. Okay. All right.
Swarm of
And-
Lightbugs should be a nature spell. Come on, Blizzard.
Ron, what is the rarity of this spell?
Oh, we go cheap for sure. It's common, easy.
It's common. Okay.
You don't got to break the bank on this one. It's just like 40 dust or 100 dust or whatever, 50 dust. How much does a common cost? I forget I said anything. It's a common. It's cheap.
Okay. I don't know. Is there anything else that we need to put on this card?
Oh, we
think,
need an image, of course.
An image. Yeah. Do you have an image?
No, I was not prepared.
No. Okay. Here we go. We need a light bug. We're just gonna look this up. Light bug.
Oh wow, risking
right.
it for the biscuit.
Nice.
Okay, you know what? I think we just take a picture of the life bug token that has different stats on the card and put that on there. Won't be confusing at all.
It's a 1 mana 0/2 lifesteal beast instead of a 1 mana 1/1 lifesteal beast. Easy.
That's the card
Okay.
art. It's beautiful. Wow.
Yep.
Maybe it should have taunt too, but too late now.
Maybe it's
Nah,
with
you
taunt,
gotta
too.
give it taunt. Come on.
It's especially worthless on its own. It needs support. This card probably never sees play.
Man.
The 0/2
You know,
killed it.
Do you
Dankest
remember when
actually
you
killed
said
the
the same
card
thing
with the
about
0/2.
Do you remember when you said the same thing about Showdown?
I don't remember that. But, surely I wouldn't say something like that.
Never.
Showdown's
None of us
nuts,
have ever
man.
been wrong. Truly. But yeah,
There you go.
like I don't know. I feel like you actually could use something like this, but like it would be so weird. Because if you actually did
Yes.
like summon a bunch of these with charge and then go observer and buff them up 1 or 2 stats, like that would probably win you the game. Good luck, priest, though.
Good luck,
You just have to-
priest.
It
You just
needs,
gotta put.
yeah.
You play these and then you purify them.
Priest
Bunch of
is definitely complaining about why is this a dual class card? And Hunter's like, why are they 0 attack? So everyone's unhappy, which is
That makes it a priest card. Yeah. it's
perhaps the ideal Hearthstone card.
It's perfect. I love it. We're gonna create this.
We
This will be
have created an abomination.
perfect. Yeah. I mean, I don't think this could have ended any other way.
All right. So this is the final card that they have created here is a priest hunter dual class spell that is 1 cost and a holy and nature spell school that says summon a 0/2 light bug with lifesteal for each enemy minion. Forge, they gain charge. And it is called Unleash the Light Bugs. Very well done, gentlemen. Round of applause. Very well done.
Yeah. This'll
Yeah.
this'll definitely mess with Sidisi's brain because he needs to auto dust any priest card, but also it's a hunter card, so he needs to make it golden and just It's going to be like a full meltdown.
So Ron. So you turn 8. So you play this on turn 9. You play Hodier, right?
Oh my
and
god!
And then you play 3/8 charges with lifesteal. Look at this.
You forge in advance, and Hodier finally has application.
See, we made a real Hearthstone card.
It's actually a 24 damage burst card on turn 9.
This is why
all you need is for your opponent to have 3 minions on the board and no taunts.
Hey.
Or you could play like Hodier on 8 maybe, and then you can just forge and play this on 9 instead of like forge first and then Hodier plus this on 9.
Oh my god!
So, something. You found it. You found the application for the card. This might be one of the most absurd cards I think I've ever seen. There's so much happening here that's so wrong.
This is exactly what I hoped for with this segment, this mini game. So thank you both.
Yes, thank you for making this. This was good.
That was fun. If you all enjoyed that segment as well, please let us know, because maybe we'll do stuff like that in the future. Maybe we could also create cards for other games that we're like, we don't even know, like, the games. Be like, I don't know what these cards are, but we're gonna make something up. And
I'm gonna make a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Yes.
You'll need to hit me with that.
Doesn't matter what the game is. I'm gonna make a dinosaur.
Okay.
Star Wars? Yeah. Dinos in space. Let's go.
Oh yes, let's do it. Exactly.
It'd be like a space T-Rex with like a lightsaber or something. Hell yeah. I'm so in.
Yes. All right. I'm for that. You know what? This show is now just going to be us creating random cards for random card games. We need to have Dankest lead one where Ron and I create like a card for universes, because neither of us have played universes.
It'll be great.
No idea what we're doing.
You'll be like, what are all these numbers on the card? Why don't it'll be perfect.
It's wonderful.
I dig it.
All right. Well, that is the mini game segment thing that we have done. Yes. I don't know what I'm calling it, but Card Curator. That is what we just did. So thank you both for participating in that unknowingly, because I didn't give either of you the heads up that that's what we were doing.
Yeah, it was fun. My pleasure. And also pain, but it was a good time.
Yeah.
All pleasure for me. That was great.
That was wonderful.
You hurt me with 0-2. You hurt me so bad, like inside, like my soul's still trying to recover. When you said 0-2, I was like, it hurts.
Yeah, that was a very like passive aggressive stab in the back. I think it was. But also, chef's kiss, perfect. It was beautiful. All right, well, this now is going to lead us into our main topic, which this week we are going to actually kind of have Dankest lead our main topic this week of macro and micro decisions. So Dankest, take it away. Tell us what macro and micro decisions are, and we'll jump into it.
Sure. So just sort of as a little bit of background, I've been captaining for my team in THL this season, and through my time there, I've been helping people with replay review and trying to help them improve their game. And macro and micro decisions are sort of the two broad categories of how you're approaching your actions in any given game. And in the case of a card game like Hearthstone, your micro decisions are the ones that are affecting your current turn and looking at the current board state. So questions like, how do I spend my mana? What's the most efficient way I can trade? How much damage can I do this turn? Those are questions that would drive your micro decisions and affect you there. On the other side of it, for macro, those are the more broad level questions, such as, how do I want to win this matchup? What is my deck's win condition? How will my turn 8 look if it's only turn 4 now? And those questions are a little bit more complex. But, a big part of improving and learning the game is finding out what sort of player you are, at which stage in your development you are, and which of those questions you need to improve at in the short term to start getting better. So now I'll leave the floor to you guys. So, that's kind of the intro, but what's your own experience with it? Do you approach macro and micro differently when you play the game? Is it something you think about? And yeah, the floor is yours.
Sweet. Dragonrider, you want to start or you want me to start?
Sure, I can start. I will say that, so Dankest and I actually talked about this last week. He and I talked about this it probably could have been its own podcast episode or mini episode, even like after last week's recording. Like we stopped recording and then we just started talking about this. So before he actually explained the definitions of micro and macro to me in relation to like card games, I didn't actually think about it in those terms. But after he explained it, I was like, oh, yeah, like, of course, I have done that and I've changed my play style. So, like, as I was learning, I was focused more on, it feels kind of weird because I feel like when I was first learning, I had to learn about kind of like the macro. And then I started learning more about the micro. And then now I've thought more about the macro again. So it was kind of weird because like at first I was like, oh, I'm playing aggressively. I just need to learn how to stop trading as much and hit in the face. And like I win with this deck by being really aggressive and going face. Okay, that's more like macro overall. And then as I learned, then it's like, oh, but maybe there's sometimes I do need to like make some trades or think about things like that. And so like, then I had to get much better, especially when I started learning multiple decks. I had to learn a lot more micro decisions and like ordering my turns and that kind of stuff. And then as I've gotten better, I'm kind of back to the macro of, okay, now that I'm facing more players who also are at least pretty good at the micro decisions, that's when I need to get better at the macro of all the various decks in the meta. So it's been kind of like a back and forth, I guess, kind of in a way like a bell curve for me, I feel like. So that's where I've been at and where I'm at now in general terms.
Nice. And at least at the beginning, just before we get to Ron, I just want to ask that follow-up. So what kind of macro questions were you asking yourself when you started out? Because I think that, there are probably some people who will listen to this who are newer, and I'm curious to see where your head was at and what they might think.
Okay, so I got to think back because this was like, 2014, 2015, maybe even into like 2016. So it's been quite a while because now we're in 2024. I think overall it was just like the very generic questions, especially to start. So like, how do I win? Or like, what does my deck want to do in general? Like, okay, this is an aggressive deck. Like, okay, how do I win? I get things on board and I hit them in the face. So it started out like very, very basic like that for me. And those were kind of like the generic questions that I was asking myself. And then as I started to play, I think like the first time I hit Legend, I honestly don't remember what even year that was. Maybe it was 16, 17. I was playing the Murloc Paladin. And that's when that deck was like really popular. That was the first deck I hit Legend with. So I really started to get better about the like, oh, okay, I recognize my deck wins when I hit face and apply pressure much more often. And then I started even like making smaller decisions like, oh, I'm going to take out this other card and put in Bluegill Warrior. I know I've told this story quite a few times, I feel like, but I was like, Bluegill Warrior, yeah, like it has charge. You just get to hit him in the face. Cool, that's what my deck wants to do. And then I hit Legend with it. So at that point, it wasn't like I was still learning and getting better at the micro, but I started out like real generic. How do I win? in general. Get things on board, hit them in the face. Okay, and then like again, as I started to change decks and play other things, or as I progressed and just got better, the questions started to change into like, okay, how do I win this matchup? How do I win when I don't draw my good cards? How do, you know, and so they started to get a little bit more specific. But at the beginning, it was very much just like, how do I win? Question mark. That's it.
Cool. Awesome. And Ron, what about you?
Micro game plan, me go face. Macro game plan, me go face. Next question.
Oh, it's too easy for him, folks.
No, I mean it developed for me actually kind of a different way than Dragon Rider. Maybe just due more to my style as a player. I built first on the micro decisions without a thought or care in the world to how I win or what happens by the time, you know, the later turns roll around. My brother showed me the game. The game looked cool. I watched him playing. His deck that he played most was Face Hunter. This was way back in the day before Hearthstone was out on mobile. So he was playing on his iPad, and you could see the streaks going face on the minions as he dragged them, just like on the iPad. And I'm like, this seems clear. This seems like a clear strategy. I like this. So I started doing the same thing. And then it was just kind of figuring out, okay, how do I spend my mana? And then, well, some of these things that hit face wound up dying. And some of the other things that hit face could have prevented the first thing that hit face from dying so that it could hit face more. So perhaps there's a way to optimize this for more face damage. And then that started to develop. And then, you know, after a little bit of time, where I was like out of the shiny and new, this is fun, I'm not thinking, I'm just throwing stuff at the game and seeing what happens, I started to work on, okay, maybe I should figure out like what the actual plan is. So then I started working on more of a macro game plan where I'm like, okay, so different matchups mean different things, and there's different ways to get to a victory. I'm also starting to play some different decks as well, and not just one specific thing. So there's different ways to kind of approach the game and try to set up the greatest advantage for myself in order to try to win. And then, you know, it starts to develop from there. And the micro became more of a, okay, how do I very cleanly and efficiently structure my turns, like especially too in a mechanical sense, like the order of how you play the cards, the order of how you make the decisions so that you can reevaluate your other decisions to make the turn better and inform how you make that game plan. Because a lot of times you have your overall game plan, and then you have the game plan that your cards in your hand are telling you have. So even if you're a control deck, sometimes the game plan is still actually just smork because your opponent is going really slowly and you happen to have tempo things to play, which usually are not tempo things, but you know, in certain instances they are. And if you're playing a deck with like no healing and you just so happen to have kept them off the board and you've made a board yourself, you can just start sending it. You don't need to just sit back and armor or heal. So it became like adaptable game plans depending on game situation and what your hand dictates you should probably be doing, while still keeping in mind what is the overall intention of what this deck wants to do and how does it win games. And it was really cool and fun to me when I hit that level in like developing and skills in Hearthstone, where I was then able to find ways to win that were not typical to what the deck's main game plan actually is. And it's just a really interesting thing. It involves usually like a pretty good amount of game knowledge and understanding of what your opponent's decks are. So often you also have game plans that form based on what you determine your opponent's deck to be. And there's so much out there that is very similar to other things. There's just established archetypes. There's people net deck all the time and find like what the most popular list is going to be. And you can almost card for card know what your opponent is running a lot of times after seeing the first few cards played in the game. And that will also determine how you're going to structure your turns in your game. So there's a lot of nuance and interplay within like the micro and the macro game plans, but ultimately still always kind of boils down to your how do I win this game? What is my deck trying to do? What is my opponent's deck trying to do? What's the best way that I can either counter them or execute my own game plan efficiently in a way that they can't counter it? And kind of nuances that flow out from there.
Awesome. So that's a great answer, but that is a lot. And there is a lot to break down there.
There's a lot in there.
We're just going to rewind a little bit. But partway through your answer, you talked about evaluating your micro decisions and making better ones as you improved as a player. So I'll open the floor to Dawn on this one too. But what exactly do you mean by that? So how do you evaluate your decisions?
Did you want me to start, or you said open the floor to Dawn, so I was sure. Okay.
Both of you can answer. Just go ahead.
All right. So
go ahead first.
When it comes to like evaluating those decisions, it takes practice. It takes review, usually of replays. And it usually involves getting either other people to look at your replays and give you some feedback, or just very, very difficult self-critical review. Like you can't go into it being like, oh, well, I definitely made the right play, so there's nothing to, break down there. If you can't break yourself out of that, then you need somebody else to come in and look at your replay and tell you you're an idiot, so that you can kind of find a different path to improve. But one of the main things for me that improved those elements was I started to watch streamers. And the first person I remember really watching a lot of and learning a lot about the game was Kibler, who is incredible at card games, of course, Magic champion from a little while back, and obviously streams lots of Hearthstone. Did a really great job of explaining his plays and why he was doing what he was doing. And then that got me to look at what I was doing and why. And so much of it winds up being just extremely influenced by what your opponent is going to do and what your opponent's cards likely are. In a vacuum, just playing, this mana card on that mana turn is good. You just do that and you don't need to think about it. But you have other decisions to make. Instead of playing a 3-mana minion on turn 3, you might play a 1-mana minion and a 2-mana minion on turn 3, as an example. And it might be better and it might be worse. And that is very dependent on what your opponent is going to do. So you need to know a little bit about what kind of deck they're playing, what their likely play would be. And then it might come down to, do they have a card like for this mana cost that just always beats you? Sometimes you just have to play right into it and hope they don't have it because it's early in the game and they only have 2 copies of that card and they've got like 25 cards in their deck still. So, okay, if they have it, they have it. And sometimes it's like, well, they're highly likely to have this card. Maybe it's a little bit later in the game. Maybe they kept a card in the mulligan that they've been holding for a while and it's great here. So what's the way I can play best around something like that in order to give myself a greater estimated total advantage? And you just look at your games and you look at what your opponent did on each specific turn that you might have a questionable micro decision and be like, if I did this, would this have gone better? If I did this every time, would this have gone better? Did they just get lucky this one time, or is this something I should do? And I mean, it just keeps branching over and over. So there's so many different, you can never get it perfect, but you can memorize a lot of gameplay patterns and you can pinpoint moments where it's like, okay, this was a pivotal moment, or this was a swing turn that won or lost the game. If I'm faced with the same kind of situation in the future, would I do it the same way, and why? Could I do it differently, and why?
And that's amazing too, just especially because I think you touch on, something called results-oriented thinking that a lot of people get bogged down in, where, if you make a play and you lose, your inclination is to think that you made a bad play, but maybe upon review, that play is the one that wins you the game in most situations. Like, we're playing card games, There's randomness, we need to accept that. But, just because a bad play wins you the game or a good play loses you the game, it doesn't mean there's nothing to learn. Like, there's
results oriented is my favorite though. I think it's one of Twitch chat's favorite things too, and having a little bit of a poker background, it was always so delightful, right? When I went all in with a 95% chance to win, but my opponent called with exactly 2 outs and 1 card remaining, and then that card hit, so they made the right play, right?
Of course,
story.
They won.
There it is, they won.
Yeah,
that's the proof.
Okay, no, this is actually really interesting because as you were talking about some of that, I started thinking, I think that my I don't want to say like more diverse card game background makes me play this way, but I think upon thinking about it, so for those who don't know, like I played some card games as a kid, and kind of like I played some Pokemon TCG, and I started learning Magic when I was 8, and then played a little bit into preteens and like early teenage years. And then I didn't play card games for a while. And then I got into Hearthstone in beta. And then I was solely playing Hearthstone for a while. And then I was like, wait, I just love card games. So then I started playing more. But I would say that I got back into other card games after I was already pretty decent at Hearthstone. So I think for me, it's like when I approach learning other games and stuff, that's kind of why I take that, like, I look at the deck list, or I'm like, okay, this deck is an aggressive deck. So I start with that macro, like, overall game plan of like, this is the aggressive deck. I need to just like be aggressive with it. And then I can learn how to make the micro decisions to follow that up. Like, oh, okay, so like I need to just play more things. And then when I'm learning other card games, sometimes that's bad because I don't know things, like I don't know the cards. Ron mentioned that, right? Like you learn about some of the cards. So I could be playing, I don't know, like I played some Magic or Legends of Runeterra, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is an aggressive deck. This is cool. I'm just going to like fill the board. And then all of a sudden my opponent plays the board removal, and I'm like, what is that card? What is that? What just happened?
Cheating, though. Right.
And then it's like, oh, okay. So I think for me, like, especially when looking at like trying to get better at certain games, one of the things for me that I learned for like the micro decisions is really learning more of the cards. And I think also for like Ron hit on this, but the patterns, like pattern recognition. So sometimes when I'm especially trying to learn other card games that I don't know as well, it's like, cool, I'm just going to like play a bunch of games and try to get like that larger game sample size and start seeing patterns. Or, maybe I do try to net deck a little bit, and I'll find like a guide, a deck guide or something, or a deck, guide video that somebody put together about the deck. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I just start with, what's the overall game plan? Okay. And then as I get more into the micro decisions, it's like, okay, let me really look at the details of this guide where they talk about versus certain matchups, you want to do this, versus certain matchups, you want to do that. Okay, cool. And then I start to like, okay, I see now the patterns and interactions, I guess. Because like, sometimes it's not just, I can just fill the board with stuff in these certain matchups. It's like, I got to space out my threats. And I think even like to use Star Wars Unlimited, which is like one of the most new card games as an example, I would say that it has a lot of similarities to Hearthstone. So I could kind of take my Hearthstone knowledge and like, okay, I can see already from the Hearthstone aspect of, do I want to trade into a minion or do I want to hit face? That's kind of the same play style that Star Wars Unlimited has. You can you can hit into one of your opponent's units on the board, or you can hit their base. So kind of the same concept. So then I would be like, okay, and now I'm getting into the micro decisions of, do I want to take a value trade? Are there certain units that are like the most important, like a leader or something that I really need to address quickly? And so then for me, it's like kind of a break it down in that aspect. And then, again, as I like pick up other decks, then I can go back to like the macro. But I would say for the micro, it's kind of step by step, like, oh, okay, what are the cards that especially like key cards or cards I see the most often, and start recognizing those patterns and the most commonly used things, and like learn those and how they kind of interact with what I'm doing, and then like go more and more detailed from there.
Absolutely. So now I'm gonna do something, we're gonna have to be a little vulnerable here. So like in yourselves or in others, what do you think the most common micro and macro mistakes are that you've seen? And if it was in your case, how did you get over it? So I'll go first, just because I feel like doing something like that is a little bit, tough. I'm not going to make you guys be like, oh yeah, I used to do this, and oh no, like I'll go too. But I know that for me, when it comes to micro, I very much would be too fast. So this constant mistake would be, trying to play my turn a little too quickly and then realizing an optimization I could have made afterwards. So in the case of a Hearthstone game, maybe I pull the trigger and go face in a situation where I would have needed to make a trade, or I proc a draw effect or discover effect, and I see an option where, had I still had the mana left, because I maybe played a card earlier in the turn, I could have changed my plan and done something a little bit better. And, I think that error is really common. And I recently made a slideshow advising what players at each level should do to improve their game. And on every slide, for every player at every level, take your time and play slower is on there as recommended advice. And
yep.
And even though, I make the mistake less, I'm not perfect, and I still do. So for macro, the one that it's sort of an extension of the same mistake, but for me, it was always tunneling in on a game plan where, I would show up, see the matchup, see my opponent, see those first couple cards, and be like, that's how I win. And I would pretty unwaveringly play toward that win condition. And this did win me at the game a lot, decent amount. And, I realized that this was probably costing me games in the long run. And like reviewing
the ones
replays,
where like, where is the card? How come I haven't drawn the card? I need the card. Where's the card? Okay, I guess I'll just draw and throw out everything but draw. I still don't have the card. Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, and like just as an example for Hearthstone, say, I was playing a priest versus hunter match, and I'm like, all right, I'm the priest. I need to gain health and control this hunter. And, I do so. And the game seems to be going well, but the hunter finds that one specific out that is able to get me zero, drawing cards off of Kodobane or doing something. And looking back at the replay, I can see situations where I could have been more aggressive and pushed more damage and used my health as a resource to give the hunter less time to draw their outs. And, this has come up in a lot of games and a lot of situations for me. So, as the aggro deck, maybe I can afford to take my time more and play more mid-rangey or control and just fight for sustained damage rather than just throwing things out as quickly as possible. Maybe saving board clears for a specific turn that the deck swings with is a bad idea if I'm going to take chip earlier that costs me. And trying to sort of reevaluate my macro plan turn to turn, I think has helped me a lot. And you know, like for the level, I think that this is sort of what got me from, you know, in the thousands legend player to like, you know, triple digits and eventually better than that. But this isn't like, this is to say that even if you are at that level, you're making legend consistently, you feel like you're very good at the game or whatever the equivalent is in your other card game, you know, there are things that are separating you from the people that are above you that aren't just time. And trying to figure out what those are and address them if you want to put in that effort is important if you're looking to get better.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I wrote my answers down. I'm showing the camera. But yeah, what I put, I feel like a child. I'm like, look what I did. I wrote it down. Okay, but for macro, yeah, I said playing the deck the same way every game, not accounting for draws or matchup. Oh man. Oh, have I done this for sure? Yep. There's some like you get, like you said, like tunnel vision into that, like, oh, okay, this is aggressive. I need to just hit face, play stuff, hit face. And sometimes that doesn't work. Not every game. Or depending on the build of the deck even, it might be slightly slower because there's a couple cards different, especially in games like Hearthstone where 30 cards is not really that many. Maybe you don't get that much of a difference if you only change out 2 cards if you're playing a 50 or 60 card deck in other card games. But the smaller your deck, you know, the more difference just a couple of cards can make. So that's why, like, I think for Hearthstone, especially talking about tech cards is like so important, right? Like, yeah, you change out 2 or 3 cards for tech cards and it's like, oh, well, all of a sudden the matchups change a little bit. Or if you draw those, they just kind of sit in your hand. And then that's when you start getting that like bias, right? Of, oh, this card is actually terrible. Well, maybe not. Depends. Maybe it's for a specific matchup, so you just don't want it there. But I think for me, like talking about replays or just talking about the game and listening to people talk about the game. I know Ron brought up earlier of like watching streamers. I have always heard that suggestion. I've suggested it for some people, but I always try to suggest other things too, because like for me, I could not learn from watching other watching streamers because I get way too distracted by the chat or talking in chat or like, you know, or you find like higher level players who maybe don't really share like why they're doing things, or they don't talk about the plays themselves. They're just talking about random stuff. And then I'm like, okay, cool. I'm just sitting here like listening to them talk about their dating life or something. And I'm like, I'm not learning anything about the game, you know? So for me, like that wasn't very helpful, but honestly, like listening to podcasts where they were very like focused on maybe breaking down a deck or talking about strategies, like exactly like what we're doing now, right? Oh, okay. That gave me something new to think about. And then, so for me, it was very much like a finding the resource of what helped me learn. And I think specifically for like that macro game plan of like, how does a deck win, or, you know, how you're playing the game in general with certain decks. Also another recognition was like, every time like telling myself, what's the second win con of the deck? Like, what's the second win condition? And so that I didn't just tunnel myself into like, oh, you only win with drawing Sif and hitting your opponent for a bunch of damage. Well, no, because also you can maybe just like play stuff every turn and get a board, and you can win with tempo. Ron mentioned that earlier too, right? Like there's every deck has like, I would say like a second type of win con, or kind of, even if it seems somewhat hidden. So I think for me, like that was the approach that I took to learn how to like break away from just playing the deck in the same way every time. And my micro is very easy. Over trading. When I was first learning, oh yeah, I was always like, oh, I can't let my opponent have stuff on the board. I'm gonna die. I can't let them have things, you know, like they're gonna hit me, or you know, whatever. And then like over time, I kind of learned, oh, actually, a lot of the time, especially if they only have like 1 minion on the board, or like they have a little like 1/3, why am I trading into the 1/3 when I can push 3 or 4 damage to their face and put that pressure on? And, you know, or sometimes it's like, oh, well, I'm going to let them make the trade. When I kind of started learning like that, I got away from the over trading. And I think a lot of people, especially like newer players, very much do that. I remember even having some coaching sessions with like Language Hacker and some other players. And they're like, they're like, well, what do you want to do this turn? And then I would say like, oh, I want to kill their thing. And they were like, is that a threatening board? Is that minion very threatening? And then I'd be like, oh, well, not really. And they're like, okay, so maybe don't trade into that minion. Like, if it's not even that threatening, you don't have to worry about it right now. Go face, put on that pressure, or like make them make the trade. And so, yeah, that's one that I have seen a lot in terms of like the micro decisions during the game.
Yeah, and I think that one is great. I would probably argue that still holds in the realm of macro, but you're more kind of toward that you're towing the line there, because it's partially what's going on this turn, partially how are my actions contributing to my long-term game plan.
Yeah.
But like that insight is really, really good. And, on the other side of it, whenever you're doing things, ask, how does doing the thing winning help me win? How is this winning me the game? And when you're choosing not to do something, think about what the option you're leaving on the table is doing to cause you to lose. Just kind of that flip side. And, that can help you find the answer. So what about you, Ron?
Well, I'd have to agree with a lot of the points that you guys already made, because they are very commonly made mistakes that I think every Hearthstone player suffers from at one point or another when it comes to like regular mistakes, and nobody really gets rid of them. It's too easy to tunnel in on certain things or forget to do like a typical process that you should always be doing, but you are limited in your time, and there's a lot of things that might be going on in the game. So as far as like a micro one for me, probably like my most frustrating like error that I make is tunneling too much in a type of game that is a very like drawn out, hard fought board battle. And I don't check for lethal. Like I always check for lethal, right? But then sometimes I forgot to check for lethal on this turn, because it's like, I don't know, it's like turn 10 or 11 by this point, and like, oh my god, it's just been so back and forth, and every board is threatening, and if I don't clear this board, I die, and if they don't clear my board, they die. But also the last couple times I've been barely off, so I'm probably barely off again. No, I'm not barely off this time. And then I trade, and I'm like, oh no. So there's the missed lethal, and you're like, oh, that one feels the worst, probably. Like when you have a lethal, if you took your time and waited and checked, and just got kind of a little bit too tunneled in on how do I not die rather than how do I kill them. Outside of that, other like very common micro decisions that I'm always like working on trying to improve. For the most part, I think I've got them down, but like the draw first, discover first type of situation. But that in and of itself, interestingly, is not a hard and fast rule. So the better you get at identifying situations and playing Hearthstone, the more you have to commit more time into, okay, first now I need to allocate all of my mana with the cards in hand and the cards on board, where they trade, where they go face. Can I win this game? Do I need to clear their board out in some way, or just leverage the best possible advantage for me? There are options that maybe give me the best chance of winning right now, and then there might be like a 1 in 13 where if I draw first, I might find this one card that would win the game. But if I do draw first, I'm spending mana to draw, and then I can't do the other play that I have the mana for in my hand right now. So now I have to determine what's best between those two options as well. So there's like a lot of things as you get like more advanced in the game and different game states to try to figure out, okay, how do I give myself the best possible chance? And sometimes that's a micro decision, and sometimes it's a macro decision where, okay, if this game winds up playing out any further, I might just have to kill them right now, because the turn that's coming up is they could have Reno, or they could have the copy Ziliax as a big example that's really common lately on turn 9s for, say, Highlander Warrior. And I want to talk a little bit more, not just about the deficiencies, but some of the things that feel the most rewarding in Hearthstone, which is the 2 major questions you ask in a very specific game state, which is, if you're pretty far ahead, how do I lose? And if you're behind or far behind, how do I win? And that means you play to the very specific outs that you normally wouldn't play to. So for instance, maybe I'm missing some damage because I know I have enough damage next turn to win the game, no matter what their turn is next turn, provided I do something specific. For instance, I have a couple of small minions on board. I want to push the face damage with them, but it's not very much, and they'll die next turn. So I should trade these minions and have them die so that I have literally nothing on the board, so they can't play their lifesteal rush minion and heal and get out of range and then win. Because if they do that, I'm going to lose. But if I deny them that, I'm going to win. And then the alternate option of, okay, I'm super far behind. The only way I could ever win is send everything face right now and hope that they don't have the good card or something. Or it's like, well, I have to draw, and find that one specific card that is just enough damage to win. Because if this game goes any additional turns, I'm never winning. And that kind of stuff, like, to a certain extent, I get frustrated with myself missing those lines because they're a lot harder to spot. And it comes down to matchup knowledge, game knowledge, the game situation, sometimes even a little bit of hand reading, like they have been holding this card for a really long time. What could it logically be given the other opportunities they had with their mana costs and turns and board states where they wouldn't have played it if it was XYZ card? So it's just, there's endless nuance, it seems, even in a game that can be fairly simple otherwise, that just keeps it so entertaining. I mean, I guess it's hitting on the point of why maybe we all love Hearthstone in our own way, or keep coming back to it over and over, because you can play the same game 1,000 times and still have a different outcome in a different game, different pilots, different draws, so many different things. But yeah, it comes down to usually, like, if I miss something that's there that, like, I know I could have spotted, I know I've played enough games, I know I've been in enough situations, how did I miss it? That's something I beat myself up over way more than a lucky draw or a bad RNG outcome or anything.
Yeah. Oh, can I piggyback off of that as well?
Oh, go for it. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, what you were saying is, like, so critical, I think, in any card game. The, like, how do I win, but also how do I lose? And even in card games, maybe like Legends of Runeterra, Magic the Gathering, card games where, like, you aren't completely in control of the trades, and especially those games where, like, the creatures or things on the board are going to be tapped, and you can't use them to block the following turn, like Magic. That was one thing that, like, when I was trying to play, the arena, like online Magic the Gathering arena, I was struggling with that some, because I would just be like, oh yeah, like, I just want to attack with everything and, like, deal a bunch of damage to them. But then all of a sudden they get to dictate which creatures are blocking which of mine, so then they can actually kind of decide the good trades, and I don't get to decide those. And then on the flip side, if I attack with everything, now everything is tapped and I don't have anything to block on their following turn. So very much like what you were saying, like, you kind of have to make those decisions of, okay, if I attack with everything, if I just, like, full send, how much of this still lives, how much gets to do damage. And if they just decide, cool, I'll let this bit of damage go because they don't want to, lose something, they'll just let some through. Then they now get to attack and I have everything tapped and I don't get to block anything. So very much that, like, oh crap, Like, that's probably how I lose, right? Like, I don't have, any ability now to dictate any trades or stop their damage. And then you have to think about that too. So I think even in card games where it's not just okay, I'm going to hit face, you do still have to make those critical decisions of which ones am I attacking with, which ones am I leaving to defend so that they can't have their out to win, or how are you deciding that? And I think even like another interesting one is with Star Wars, again, Star Wars Unlimited, where it's I take one action, you take one action, I take one action, you take one action. The kind of you mentioned earlier with draw first or do my generation, those micro decisions of which thing am I actually doing first in the turn, what's the best for me to do first? Do I want to take this value trade into their other thing and then let them attack with this other big thing that they have on the board? Or does my first action need to be trying to deal with their big thing and then they get to attack with their other thing that's on the board? Or, how are you going to approach that? It's so different based on the mechanics of the game.
Yes.
And it's like, you can probably already like hear it. I'm just like, if you see me on screen, I'm like, again, I feel like a little kid. I'm like, this is so exciting. Like, I love talking about this kind of stuff. Like, it's just exciting to me because it's kind of like what you mentioned earlier, Ron, where it's like you can play games over and over and over, but every situation creates these like slightly different scenarios. And it's like a puzzle, like every time that you're like, okay, well, how do I do it this time? How do I do it this time? Mm-hmm. What's like the overall, what's the 8 or 9 out of 10 times I should do this, and so like, it feels like you're constantly learning and constantly thinking about all of these scenarios. And that's one thing I love about like these micro decisions and talking about this for all of these different card games.
Yeah. And you might be tempted maybe to think, from hearing us talk that like micro is easy, macro is advanced. And no, they're just different. You just mostly get presented with easy micro problems. So, if you're playing Warrior and your opponent has a big board and you have access to your Bellowing Flames, cards that draw, and you don't have a Badlands Brawler or Reno, boy, you really got to think about how you're spending your resources. Because do you want to draw, maybe look for Sanitize, or can Bellowing Flames hit in such a way that you can clear the board with your current resources? And if it can hit in such a way, what are the odds of that happening? And given all of that, should you draw or play Bellowing Flames? Mathematically, there's a right answer to that question. There is something objectively correct that you can do in that situation. But boy, is it tough to figure out and execute in 75 seconds.
Yes.
And
that's a great point, by the way, that there's a mathematically correct decision to make, because you will find top level Hearthstone players, especially like the really, really good top players like McBanterface or Pocket Train or Insane or Meaty or any number of those players that are, as they're trying to figure out their turn, they say, am I supposed to do this? Well, like, it's your game, you're supposed to do whatever you feel like you want to do here, right? But supposed to is specifically referring to that point that you brought up, that like, there's a correct line. Out of all the things that I could do, there's one thing that is objectively more correct than the rest the majority of the time. So I should do that thing. What is that thing? And then they're trying to find it.
Yes. And I figure we can have one more question to close this out. And once again, I'll go first on this one. But is there one more area of macro or micro that you would like to see people explore more in Hearthstone or another game? Because for me, with Hearthstone, this is one of my big beefs. And I bring this up all the time about HS Replay. But mulligans are still something we're living in the Stone Age on, relatively speaking, with our data. So right now, if you go onto one of those sites and get mulligan data, you're only able to see which cards are good in your opening hand by matchup. And I would love to see the community driving a bigger conversation about combinations of cards and the dependence of those mulligan win rates. Because right now, and always, the cards are not in a vacuum. And to bring up an example that's a little bit older, if you played Hearthstone, you may have remembered Wild Paw Cavern and Lightning Bloom. And both of these cards had very, very high win rates if you kept them in your opening hand, but neither was quite as good without the other. And in the data that we collect now, even a few years later in 2024, we still don't really see that intermixing effect of which cards are better kept in pairs with other ones. And while, good players are going to be putting together hands that are functional and lead to some sort of macro game plan, they're doing it in a qualitative way right now. And it would be really cool to get more tools to be able to try to start going at it quantitatively, so qualitatively we can look further and innovate on the next thing. So that's my soapbox on it. But do you guys have anything else that you're sort of looking to see or would be excited to learn more about?
Take it away, Dragon Rider.
Okay. Yeah. I think Ron's letting me because I was like, like when a dog's excited and they have the wiggle butt and they're just wiggling their whole body. That's what I'm doing. I'm like, yeah. I have an answer. Okay. Mine is before the game even starts, the macro and micro of card choices, because you can see this again in different card games. Are you building the deck based on bringing it in ladder, or where you only bring one deck to a best of 3 or something like that, where you kind of have to build the deck in a way that's good against the general field? That changes your choices of cards. But then you can look at okay, is it something like a Hearthstone tournament where I have to build multiple decks for a lineup where I get to ban something and then be good. Maybe you're setting it up to be good against certain other decks that you expect to see. Or, because then, as I mentioned earlier, right, you might have put 2 tech cards or something in there that are specifically for certain matchups. I think for Hearthstone, a good example of that is something like weapon removal or a freeze, type effect where Glacial Shard, right? 1 mana, 2/1 freezes something, okay, cool. Maybe you're using that for a hero because Warrior's popular and Demon Hunter's popular, and you're going to ban this other thing and then have these freeze tech cards to freeze your opponents and set up ideally better matchups. But those cards aren't good in the general aspect or as good, right? If you just look purely at stats in an overall spectrum, they might show lower win rates. But then that's where things like if you have the HS Replay Premium, and you select a very specific class, that card might all of a sudden have a higher win rate. So that's something. And then also, we don't have it in Hearthstone, but in other games, maybe like Magic or in some other card games, especially for tournaments, you might have a sideboard. So you bring your one deck, but then you have a sideboard of 10 cards or 15, whatever it is for that certain game, where you can bring kind of those tech cards or change things up a little bit that you get to switch out in between the games of that set or that match. So for me, it's that feels like such an important aspect of how you approach before the game even starts. And then I think that also leads into the mulligans and stuff as well, right? Because then people will say, oh, I put this card in my deck, and then they might keep it in a matchup where they shouldn't be keeping it. Or, because it's for a very specific matchup, because maybe they're just net deck and they say, oh yeah, cool, that, Pocket Train did really well with this deck, I'm just going to take this deck and play it on ladder. And then they don't think about how those cards are impacted for the overall field versus the very specific situation, that those players built it for that tournament. And so just talking about those always is so interesting to me.
Yeah, if we ever want to make a bunch of people very, very mad, we can title a show The Correct Way to Sideboard, and we will We'll either gain a lot or lose a lot of listeners. Something will happen.
I will say it's kind of interesting how Hearthstone has introduced like very small forays into sort of like having a sideboard. Obviously there's ETC, so you have 3 different cards that you can specifically, it's almost always just like different tech choices for whatever happens to be more popular in the meta, and it's locked behind a very bad card, a 4-mana 4/4. So there's a pretty steep price to pay for your sideboard, because there's a pretty big tempo loss for just playing a card like that, which means mostly only control decks can get away with using a card like that, which kind of limits the amount of availability for a sideboard. But just imagine if it wasn't locked behind, such a strong card. If it's like a 0-mana spell that you could play to discover any of the 3 sideboard things that you put in your deck, oh man, things are getting messy. If that were to happen, there's also
what about a 2-mana 3/2 that does that? What do you think?
That would be kind of cool, but maybe it's still too cheap for something like that. I don't know.
You could make it so you can't have duplicates, and then maybe it's balanced.
Yeah, sure. Sure, that'll work for sure. But you have something like that, and you have Ziliax as a very interesting, like, different deck building choice. It's sort of like the ETC sideboard. It's sort of just like, okay, this is I'm going to go with a specific sort of pre-established Ziliax route based on what my deck's macro game plan probably is, where it's like, okay, well, if I'm a control deck, I probably want especially if you can do more with your battle cries, you probably want the 9-mana Ziliax that has Divine Shield and Taunt and Rush and Lifesteal and copies itself. That one's pretty good. Or if you're an aggressive deck that's flooding the board, you probably want the one that gives buffs to your board and gets discounted with how many minions there are. And those are probably the 2 most popular versions. But there's like some different interesting stuff there. And as far as like the other point you made, Dankest, about the mulligans, I think it's a really good point. Like the tandem keeps. There's nothing out there data-wise that tells you that, this card is good in your mulligan if you have this other card. And if you don't, you probably want to throw it back. And what I find myself doing a lot, except in specific hands in Hunter, is I don't often keep the location. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I keep it much more often than I keep the RC Hounds. But if I have the location and the RC Hounds, you better believe I'm always keeping the 2 of those cards together. And that's not something that a data site is going to tell you. You just kind of learn that by experience, or by someone else maybe saying, hey, this is good to keep together. And there's plenty of other examples like that we just don't really have any information on. And it's such a huge difference in the game. Like, you look at the mulligan stats and you're like, okay, well, I guess I shouldn't keep this card. It's not that great. And you evaluate each singular card in a vacuum, but there are so many things in today's Hearthstone, especially, that are built around packages and synergy between the cards. And you probably want to keep the package card that goes together with the other package card, because they make each other much better than they are in the vacuum that you're apparently evaluating your decision off of in the first place. So, stats aren't gospel is kind of what it boils down to, until we reach such a point maybe where stats are perfect, which probably won't happen. So there's a lot of personal gameplay experience that needs to come into play. And the mulligan decision especially is one of the most challenging parts in all of Hearthstone.
As a data scientist, I'll fight you slightly and say stats are typically perfect. It's just that our interpretation of them is suspect, and sometimes we mislead ourselves into thinking things that aren't true. So
what?
That's probably a different philosophical conversation where you get to
Yeah.
Stats are perfect. They aren't. It depends on human interpretation. You can't ever separate that from the stats.
Correct.
Stats are made by humans in the first place. So who's to say? You know, we could
Yeah.
make a new show about
Yeah.
are stats perfect or not.
Talk about either gaining followers or losing followers. There, that's the
But yeah,
one.
Yeah.
that one's a dangerous road. Fair point, though. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh, but with that, though, I think we can put a nice bow on this discussion. And I think we covered a lot. And thank you guys for once again sort of indulging me on one of these topics I like to talk about. This was an awesome show.
It was great.
Yeah. Thanks for coming up with the topic idea and leading us through it. It was exciting. Man. God, I love talking to you guys about card games. I'll just say, like, when we first got into the call, I was not having the greatest of days. Like, it'd been a rough morning, and now I'm like, got a big old smile on my face. I'm just excited. I'm like, yeah, card games. Like, we can talk about stuff. So, always, if I wasn't in a good mood, I am now. So, thank you.
This just in on TCCG Roundtable. We love card games. It really was. It was a great discussion. I had a blast. Thank you guys for engaging, and thank you, Dankest, for introducing that subject. And thank you all, the viewers, for joining us this week. If you or someone you know would be interested in joining us, please reach out to us. You can email us at tccgroundtable@protonmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at TCCG Roundtable. Use our top pinned tweet for a link to our Discord, or use the link in the description and show notes. You can check out our video version at youtube.com/dragonrider_TCCG. And you can find us everywhere you can find audio podcasts. Also, if you are interested in some other sweet merch, playmats, card game accessories, and whatnot, please check out our Inked Gaming affiliate, where you can get those fantastic little extra bits of gear for your physical card games as well, while supporting us directly. And you can find us individually in a few different places. For me personally, I'll start. You can find me on Twitter at Ron_HS. You can find me on Twitch, streaming Monday through Friday, every weekday at 7 p.m. Eastern at RonMexico HS. And dragonrider, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at DonnieDK. That's DAWNIEDK. You can find me both on Twitch and YouTube, dragonrider TCCG. And you can also hear me talking about standard Hearthstone, specifically on the Dr. 3HS podcast, which we are hitting a huge milestone coming up here. This next coming week, we are hitting episode 250. Which is, it's very exciting. Nice. And we also have a very, 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 very special guest and interview coming. So very excited for that. So check it out.
I'm looking forward to it. And lastly, Dankest, where can they find you?
As I want to say, sometimes Ohio. And also on twitter.com/daddankest, youtube.com, and twitch.com as DankestDadCCG. And on Discord as DankestDad.
Fantastic. Thank you once again, everyone, and we will see you at the roundtable.